Okay, I can see we've missed our cue here tonight. Let me get started. Welcome to the Sacred Cow Barbecue. I'm Patricia Aiken, an average host with exceptional guests. And I want to give a shout out to my new friend Jake in Shadron. He threatened to listen tonight. Also, I want to let everyone know that Jim Cole from Maxim Labs reported to federal prison in Lompoc, California Monday. I'll give you his inmate number and mailing address later this evening. It's disgusting and ridiculous, and I hope you'll send him some mail to encourage him. Well, the Star Chamber will be in full swing next week, and Portland jury selection begins in less than a week. So it's my privilege to welcome Dr. Roger Roots back to the barbecue. He's been working on the Oregon case. Roger, thanks for taking the time to be here tonight and for everything you're doing in the Refuge case.
Well, thank you, Patricia.
Well, as the author of The Conviction Factory, The Collapse of America's Criminal Courts, if anyone knows what the Bundy defendants are up against, you do.
Well, yeah, and they're up against an unbelievable prosecution machine. It's just unbelievable. It's such an overblown case that really is very minor in its actual, you could say, facts. But I guess the government is taking it very, very seriously. It's almost like the biggest trial of the century. They're treating it that way. Anyway.
I agree with you. The two Bundy cases are definitely the trials of the century, no doubt about it. And if ever there was a time for a fully informed jury, this is it.
Yeah, they're in a hostile territory, Portland, Oregon. The events allegedly took place in, the Burns area of Oregon, which is much, much different culturally. It's over there in, eastern Oregon. Portland, as you know, is mega, I don't know what you could say. It's
the seat of Satan.
You could say it's a bevy of people who trust expensive government. Let's put it that way.
That's one way to put it. Marxist to the core, if you ask me. And that's why it's being tried there. I mean, that case really doesn't belong in Portland.
No, not at all.
So is that a reversible error?
It's been challenged already. There's one defendant, Shauna Cox, who has filed an appeal, an interlocutory appeal right now to the Ninth Circuit. And that should have delayed the trial, but it's not. I guess the trial judge is just going forward as if there's no appeal even filed.
Yeah, the fix is in a big way on this. And so Shauna's a pretty great gal, isn't she?
Yes, definitely, yeah. Very strong, very strong.
Right, I know. The Jim Cole, who I mentioned at the top of the show, the Portland defense attorney that was representing Shauna was one of his defense attorneys, and so as a matter of fact, when after Jim's sentencing, when he said, everything that happened to me is so unconstitutional, she goes, "Oh, I know all about the Constitution. I just spent 4 hours with someone and it was Shauna Cox who'd been." Trying to explain the Constitution to a lawyer, You got to break it down really easy for most lawyers, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I want to let you, what do you want to tell us about this case, Roger? I don't want to ask you questions that you can't answer. I don't want to, first of all, how's Ryan Bundy?
As I think most anyone who listens to your show knows, Ryan has been through an awful lot, especially in recent weeks. Well, actually, he's been treated very, very badly in this entire episode.
Horrible.
Anyway, he was sort of roughed up. He was assaulted by jail officers right there in the jail. They claimed at the time they were taking him, they came to him early in the morning to his cell and said he had court that day. And he said, "Well, court, there's nothing on the docket. There's no court proceeding." And they said, "Pack up your stuff. We're taking you out for court." And what it was they were lying to him, and they were going to go through some preliminary steps to take the bullet out of his shoulder by force. And they were going to, keep in mind that the case law on that issue is very strong. Every American has a right to his bodily integrity. There's a Supreme Court case, I forget the name of it. You cannot be forced into surgery against your will, even if you're a prisoner.
Yeah, this is part of your, a constitutional right against, search and seizure kind of things. I mean, a right to be secure in your person.
Well, absolutely. It's a right to your bodily integrity. It's one of the highest rights that we have as Americans. The right not to be taken and forcibly, subjected to medical procedures of some kind. Anyway, as most people who are aware of the story know, Ryan has a bullet in his shoulder, which he received on the date of his arrest. In a spray of gunfire in which FBI agents killed Lavoy Finicum and basically opened fire on the others. Again, I don't want to get deep into that case. Reasonable minds can disagree, but basically it's well documented already that the FBI lied. And initially, they were claiming they never fired a round, and it was only the Oregon State Police. It later came out, no, the FBI were also firing. It was an ambush kind of a thing. Anyway, to make a long story short.
No doubt about it. And Ryan was shot right before Lavoy Finicum got out of the truck, I believe.
Well, it's not clear. I mean, they're still waiting on, the police, the reports are coming out, and there's an autopsy that supposedly has come out, and there is a law firm out of California that is preparing to take the case civilly and file on behalf of the family of Lavoy Finicum, and also Shauna Cox, who was also in the vehicle, and Ryan Bundy and Victoria Sharp, who was also in the vehicle. Yeah. And also that the fact that the fact that they were fired on before anyone even left the vehicle is also substantiated by Ryan Payne, who had gotten out of the vehicle at an earlier stop, right, where they had been pulled over earlier on the same road, and I believe Ryan Payne may have been in the passenger seat.
Right, he was in the passenger seat.
Out.
Right.
Yeah, my understanding of the fact is he stuck his hands out to say, to show that, I mean, they were unarmed, what's going on. They were being surrounded by agents, law enforcement. And at that point, a laser beam was on his forehead. And my understanding is a round was fired at that time, and that was at the earlier stop. So they were even fired on at the earlier stop, and that's when Lavoy Finicum hit the gas. That's my understanding, anyway.
Yeah, well, so, that's what the video shows. I mean, that's what the video shows. Both of them, both Ryan's video and Shauna's video from their phones.
Yeah. Well, anyway, there are a lot of facts that are still to be known.
Well, one of the things that I think is important in that case, and I sent Rudy a email about it, was that it's unlawful, and I forget what the statute is, for police officers of any kind to dress in civilian clothes as a decoy, and that's what they did. They weren't, and they admit that they weren't in their uniforms.
Well, they do that kind of thing all the time. I mean, they've been doing that for years, undercover operations of all kinds.
Yeah.
So, yeah, then this trial is going to start September 6th, which is next week, and I will be over there in Portland, and one lawyer estimated to me that the feds are spending $100 million on this trial alone. And just in terms of the staff, the lawyers, the prosecutors, they have full-time people. They're going out, they're witness, they're going to witnesses and trying to get them to,
recant.
I don't know what I can say about that at this time, but
okay,
they're spending every dime of taxpayer money to convict Ammon Bundy and Ryan Bundy and the others in that trial. The judge finally split the trial into two trials. There's going to be another one in February, But the initial one is going to be just, well, Ammon Bundy, Ryan Bundy, Shauna Cox, David Fry, and a couple others. And the others will be tried in the second trial in the beginning of the year of 2017.
Well, February
but
is when
they're spending big bucks on it.
February is when the Nevada case, the ranch case, is supposed to go to trial.
Yeah, and some of the same defendants
right.
Are in that same case in Nevada. Now, it's like something I've never even heard of before in terms of what the feds want to do is quickly convict, Ammon Bundy, Ryan Bundy, etc., and then quickly fly them down immediately to face a second trial in the U.S. District of Nevada. And by the way, that case is even worse in terms of the potential sentencing implications of it. Much worse. Total, if you add up the counts in the Nevada indictment, it's probably 4 times worse.
Yeah, and one of the defense attorneys, I was at the arraignment for all of them. No, it was at the time when they were one of the other hearings when all the attorneys were there, and Cal Porter got up and said, "This is the Oregon case is like a glorified trespass case, and there isn't any trespass in that case. The doors were left open, the keys were either given to them or left on the desk. There's no trespassing." They were invited.
The thing is, trespassing is a state charge, and that might have been appropriate for a state prosecution, but the feds have charged these ridiculous counts. I mean, the big one is count 1, which is conspiracy to impede federal officers, and that is so, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to fit with the facts, the accusation itself. I mean, the claim that the government is pursuing is that these occupiers had a goal of, stopping government officers from going to work. And I don't know what evidence they're going to come up with, but, sure, they can come up with the fact that people post anti-BLM statements and things. I mean, all of us, we all make anti-government statements. Does that mean that you're in a conspiracy to impede such people from going to work?
No,
I think most of us, we couldn't care less,
One of the Nevada defendant, Rick Loveling, I mean, the only thing they have him on is liking on Facebook a fundraiser for Operation Mutual Aid is what it was called at the time. He put a like button, just click the like button, and that's all they have him on. And since when is free speech?
It seems very random. It almost seems random to me as to who got indicted and who didn't. I mean, in Nevada, there were hundreds of people, thousands probably.
Oh no, there were thousands.
Yeah, and it seems pretty random about who got indicted and who didn't. It almost seems like a luck of the draw kind of thing. I mean,
it is. Jerry DeLemus wasn't even at the Nevada standoff. Not even at the standoff. As a matter of fact, when he did get there from New Hampshire, he went down to Sheriff Gillespie's office with a message from Cliven saying, if you're going to arrest Cliven Bundy, he says, let him know and he'll turn himself in. That's what Jerry's role was after the standoff.
Wow. And I believe he's given signs he's pleading guilty. I don't understand why these guys are.
Jerry DeLemus is going to take a plea?
That's my understanding.
Boy, I haven't talked to his wife in a couple of weeks since I've been in Nebraska. I've been busier than a one-armed paper hanger, so I haven't kept up on talking with the family members. That's a disaster, absolute disaster. Yeah. How many people are starting wanting to take a plea, and it's because they're getting bad advice from their attorneys.
Well, some of those there are a couple guys who did nothing more than drive down there for a weekend, and they were there for only a weekend, in which they may have, stood on some position and perhaps had a firearm, which of course is completely legal and lawful. And the feds are charging them with these firearms counts, which are mandatory minimum 5-year or 7-year sentences for so-called brandishing firearms. Mandatory minimum 7 years. And it's mandatory that they be stacked in the event of conviction. In other words, a count 1 or a count 2 or a count 3 in the event of conviction on multiple counts.
30 years.
They are to run consecutive, which is not normal. Normally, if you're convicted on multiple counts at the same trial, you would serve them all at the same time concurrently. But some of those federal firearm statutes are so evilly written that they require consecutive sentences.
Yeah,
brandishing a firearm.
Time off. There's no time off for good behavior at Club Fed, right?
Oh, I think the federal inmates serve 85% at least of what the sentence they are given.
Yeah, it's crazy that someone like Todd Engel, I mean, he was there directing traffic, helping the state troopers direct traffic. He was there for a total of 4 hours. Then they went up to Mesquite. Actually, they camped in the desert that night. They left at 2:00, went camping in the desert that night, and then spent the rest of the weekend at a motel hanging out around the pool in Mesquite.
It's totally random. In my opinion, the feds are in such a state of hysteria, I guess, over the I don't know, this rising resistance or defiance, that they are just lashing out blindly almost. It almost seems
they want to make an example of every one of these people. So if anything else that happens, nobody will show up. Like the Hammonds being charged with terrorism under the Patriot Act. That's absurd. Every rancher in the West uses prescribed burns and a backfire to stop the one that the BLM said, or the forestry said against them. Yeah, it was BLM agents.
And the Hammonds were accused of starting a fire on their own allotment.
Yeah.
Even more preposterous.
It is. In double jeopardy. Double jeopardy. They already served sentences, and then they put them back in for 5 years.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, it's the craziest thing. I'm telling you, this conviction factory. It's Bolshevik America. I can't get over it. Every one of these people seem to be above the law. People like Harry Reid, the Kate Brown. I mean, all these clowns, and Judge Grasty, man, above the law.
Well, that's the country we're living in. It's probably the country most people have lived in. Honestly, the history of every government that ever existed is about the same. Every government that ever existed ultimately came for all freedom, all money, all property, and to kill all who resist. And there has never been an exception. Every government goes down the same path ultimately.
Yeah, and then so to hear these veterans congratulating themselves and saying, "Oh, because of them, we have our rights." I'm telling you, I want to throw up every time I see one of those signs. What rights do we still have left in the United States?
Yeah, it seems like the more the military budgets go up, the fewer liberties we have. So, it's when I hear someone say that they're fighting for our freedom, I say, well, is that really true? It seems like we're getting less free.
Yeah, you do. Well, you're doing a darn poor job of it. Then that's what.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, but the national media, anything that they promote ad nauseum, we live in opposite land. It's the opposite. So the fact that they play up how wonderful the military is and everything, I can't turn on a sporting event that you don't see that. They have to trot out the military and make big heroes out of them when they're just the henchmen. They're the attack dogs for the New World Order.
Well, and I don't know if you've seen the stories. It has come out that, in fact, all of those NFL military displays are funded by the military. I don't know if you've seen that news. It has come out that hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money has been spent at NFL games, Major League Baseball games, NBA basketball games, to have moments of silence in which the audience is led to believe that they're having some kind of a spontaneous, moment to honor and commemorate the troops. And of course, it's just government advertising.
It's just
government
propaganda. Well, this $100 million that they're spending on this Oregon case, is so preposterous. I mean, I know when they get a jury, especially in one of these federal cases, oh my gosh, they treat them with kid gloves. They bring them lattes and give them candy all day and have these big Jumbotron TVs for them and everything. Does a jury stand a chance of getting the real story in this case, Roger?
It's funny because the lawyers that I've seen in the case are, let's face it, I mean, most, the bar and the bench have been completely gutted of all, anti-government, defiers of intrusive, expensive government. There are so few lawyers that are psychologically able, in their own minds, to defy the state. It just seems there are so few lawyers that are even capable of doing it mentally. They just can't. They visualize the claims of the government as being fundamentally correct. Whereas, the truth is that the adversarial system we have is supposed to assume and presume that the government is wrong. But the bar and the bench have been just so populated by, I'd call them government trusters or even government supremacists, that it's sort of sad. I have seen, however, having said that, some of the lawyers there they are experienced trial lawyers. Some of them have been, done on a lot of big federal drug cases and things, and a couple of them have done these big drug conspiracy defense trials and things.
And did they actually defend them, or just talk them into taking a plea?
Well, I mean, it's a common joke that the defense bar, the defense lawyers of modern America, work hardest to get their own clients to plead guilty. They work harder to get their own clients to plead guilty than they do at defending their clients.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and by the way, there are the pressure to right now. The feds are coming in and they really are offering some sweet deals, and they're also doing high pressure stuff. My understanding is, I won't tell you who the source is, but they're pressuring, suggesting to people that they may be charged with more stuff if they don't plead guilty. So they're coming in both with sweetheart deals. Hey, just plead to a misdemeanor and it'll all be over for you. Or if you don't plead, well, there's these other charges we could bring against you in the future. See, so they're coming in with this 1-2 punch, and
that's how
I believe
they
the
do in
main
drug
defendants.
Cases. That's how they'll arrest say 10, and then they'll go in and they will arrest another 40, and then they arrest the 600 after that. They do it in stages, so they're perfectly capable of doing what they're threatening to do.
Well, you look at the Soviet Union, which went through the same kind of things that we are going through now, where they started with these purges and things. And it is so sad. First, the government comes for the defiers and the resistors.
Right.
But it doesn't take long when those are all wiped out. You look at the Soviet history, it doesn't take long before it then becomes the people who are most trusting of government who get hauled in for trials and show trials, and they get executed because the people at the very top, Stalin, is most jealous of those people who are the trusters of him, who he views as potential rivals. And so the people who trust government the most are always, after the initial defier, after Patricia, you and I, and a few of us are taken to the concentration camps, it won't be long before government comes for the very people who are the biggest cheerleaders for government.
Oh yeah, the Marxists have no mercy. The Bolsheviks have no mercy. As a matter of fact, the first week when Ammon guys were all arrested, after Lavoie was murdered, a group of my friends here from the barbecue, we read the initial chapter of Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, which is the arrests. You're right on the money. It's Bolshevik America, and how we've been asleep to this for so long. I don't know.
Every society is asleep to it. It's amazing. As bad as it is here, it's worse. It's worse in other places. And the thing is, America was free for a long time due to the Bill of Rights. And, the Bill of Rights has just faded, but it kept us relatively free, freer than other places in the world for so long. And, over time, you look at the way the school system has developed. It's now a government school system. At higher education, the institutions of higher learning are completely pro-government. The professors are cheerleaders for expansive government, socialism, more government control over everything, healthcare, you name it.
Right.
And
the Frankfurt School has totally infiltrated our institutions here. You were just at an event in Seattle, weren't you? And you got to see a lot of academics.
Oh yeah, the Society for the Study of Social Problems, which is a sociological organization of professors of social sciences. Listen, I have a PhD in sociology, so I've lived a world where I've been surrounded by people like that, people who believe in their heart. I mean, they talk about corruption and corruption and corruption, like Bernie Sanders, for example. He goes around talking about corruption and everything. But in the end, they have almost a childlike trust in government. And they just think, well, if only we could get rid of those people who distrust government, if only we could rid the world of all the skeptics and the doubters, and then we can just impose our socialist dream world on them, But this is the world they live in. It's a childlike trust in government.
Yeah,
it's funny. No matter how many times it fails them, they still trust it, and they don't trust capitalism or free markets, no matter how many times free markets succeed.
I don't. And so, what makes us different? They're the majority of people out there. Even people that call themselves conservatives today aren't. And we have to say, when you hear the word conservative, you have to understand that means we have something left to conserve. There really isn't anything left to conserve here. We need to start over.
The government is so powerful. This case that we're talking about exemplifies so much. It is such a petty case. I mean, I still can't even believe the amount of money and resources that the federal government has exhausted in this. They literally took over a town, Burns, Oregon. They took over a town. They came in with hundreds of agents, some undercover. They took over the school. They put concertina wire on the roofs of all the buildings. They took over the city hall, barbed wire, tanks, the airport filled with military weaponry.
It was like a training exercise for these people.
And it was over nothing. I mean, you look back in American history, just 50, 40 years ago, there was the Weather Underground, and there were, the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers took over the California state capitol with machine guns, and they got like a year in jail. Just think about that.
Eric Holder took over a building, I think it was at Columbia University.
Columbia University took it over with weapons. And I'm not sure he served a day in jail.
It didn't hurt his career any.
Yeah, well, he became a U.S. Attorney General.
Yeah.
But the Weather Underground, Bill Ayers, who is now a professor at the University of Chicago, Bill Ayers blew up federal buildings. I mean, that was not that long ago. And these Bundys, I mean, my God, they did nothing. I just shake my head.
No, and they couldn't be nicer men. Honestly, more patient, more understanding. I mean, if you've seen all the videos that Ammon and Ryan did, and they're some of the finest men I know. It breaks my heart to see them going through this.
The federal government has achieved a state of such total control and omnipotent power that it almost it's funny. It fears nothing, and yet it trembles in its boots from the slightest show of defiance. It really, and the military is that way too. The U.S. military faces no enemy in the world that could even possibly pose a threat to it right now. And yet, but to listen to them talk about, the threats globally, it just, I shake my head. I mean, what world are they living in? They're afraid of people who live in, caves or somewhere 8,000 miles away, and don't have an army and don't have an air force. It never before has any government been so powerful over everything as the current United States government is. And it is treating the slightest show of defiance as the greatest existential threat that it could ever face.
Yeah, it's absolutely remarkable. Well, and I don't really believe that it was the FBI that shot, Ryan or Lavoie. I believe it was UN troops because of the comment that was made by one of the men afterwards that they couldn't go into Grant County because it wasn't a UN friendly area. And there are lots of people that didn't speak English in Burns around that time. So I don't even, and that's why I think they want that bullet so bad. But that's just me and my tinfoil hat.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about the UN angle. I'd have to look into that.
Yeah. Well, let me just to say, what are they saying about the dead witnesses? You got 3 dead nurses and the dead snowmobiler that probably witnessed the whole thing.
Well, I can tell you there are rumors circulating around, and I don't know what it's funny. Yeah, there are 3. Burns is a small town. I mean, it's the size of Gordon, Nebraska. I mean, it's the size of Big Timber, Montana, where I grew up. I mean, it's that size. It's a town with 1 McDonald's, and it's got maybe 2 stoplights, and in that one town, there have been, as you say, 3 nurses who treated people involved in this case who've gone, I was about to say gone missing. 1 or 2 have said they've been committed suicide, and the other died mysteriously also. So yeah, there's a lot of strange things going on.
Yeah, in the snowmobiler witness and intimidating witnesses, potential witnesses. So do you think Ryan Bundy actually has a chance of getting Kate Brown to come testify on a subpoena?
It's already been denied.
They've quashed it already?
Already denied it, yep.
Oh, my God.
And, and by the way, she's an important witness in the trial because she actually triggered all of the events, after the shooting with Lavoie and that kind of thing. Just 1 or 2 days before then, Kate Brown, the governor of Oregon, had issued these decrees, and I mean, almost hysterical. Yeah. These men need to be stopped at all costs. I mean, just hysterical. Yeah. And that sort of triggered an escalation of the militarization of the situation, and the ambush, situation, and that proclamation of Governor Brown led to, it reverberated through the entire community, let's say, and the guys who remained at the at what's called the Malheur area, they were living in an absolute state of fear that they were going to be just taken out militarily. And so, there's now an allegation that they dug a trench to survive, to protect themselves from gunfire. And, that's part of the indictment,
I doubt they did that. But, they had bombs. They had planted a bomb in the building. And thankfully, they just happened to have a bomb expert with them at the time. And Ammon said, hey, we found this bomb. Don't worry, we're not going to use it. They've been trying they want to get rid of those buildings anyway because they're outdated. And that's what I heard from Cliff Gardner. And so now they're trying to, and the fact that they use the $6 million number just cracks me up. Oh, 6 million. Yeah. We've heard that number before. You kidding me? Me and a couple of girlfriends could have gone in there and cleared, cleaned that place up for, maybe $600.
Well, it's almost a running joke where the government is claiming that actually I should go into this a little bit because it's really fascinating. The government has come in a variety of ways, press conferences and things, and by the way, an official letter by the Department of Interior to the U.S. Senate seeking more money and this kind of thing, claiming just preposterously that these occupiers, who were only there for 41 days in the middle of winter, when there wasn't much activity, no visitors were there anyway, they're claiming that they caused $6.9 million worth of, quote, damages, unquote. Anyway, everything from, harming the soil, harming the irrigation schedule. By the way, there was no irrigation schedule. This is in the middle of winter, and they're claiming that it disrupted the efforts of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife to control noxious weeds or invasive plants or species and things. I mean, just the level of hubris, I guess, is astounding. Anyway,
it's crazy.
Last week, Shauna Cox, one of the defendants, she's been looking for accountants and auditors who can go through these books and really examine these monetary claims. And she came up with a guy with a PhD in accounting.
Right,
as an expert witness.
That's the person that we communicated about.
Yes, exactly. And anyway, the judge in the case
keep in mind that the feds listen to this show. The last time Shauna was on, man, they had her back in court the next day, complaining that she was saying stuff on the radio. So just keep in mind everything you say that they're going to know about.
Well, here's the thing: the judge in the case, upon hearing that the accounting irregularities were going to be challenged at the trial, immediately turned to the Justice Department prosecutors there and said, "Well, are you going to be presenting these monetary claims that have been made in the media?" And they denied instantly. Oh, no. So basically, their plan at this point, all these ridiculous monetary claims that they've been making, their plan at this point is to, in the event of sentencing, in the event of anybody getting convicted, they will go to sentencing, and they will then assert these claims that will not be vetted properly by a jury. No jury will be able to, consider how preposterous these monetary claims are. And so what will happen is, in the event that anybody gets convicted, the feds are going to come in asserting these unbelievable, exorbitant, prices. By the way, and I've talked to several accountants who've said that just the hotel costs alone that they're claiming should have triggered perhaps a criminal investigation. They were so expensive. They're claiming in the I think high hundreds of thousands of dollars just for moving the families of BLM, these scared and frightened BLM workers, to distant places where they lived, I guess at a level of luxury greater than the Rolling Stones live when they're on tour in Dubai. I mean, as much as $2,000 per night per BLM family for hotel expenses.
It's absurd. There's nothing they won't do here. So now, I know you're a realist, Roger. Are you going to be able to sit at the table and participate? Is the judge going to allow you to be pro hoc vice and be on this case?
Well, I've been denied on the pro hoc vice as a co-counsel, as standby counsel. However, I think I'll be a paralegal. I'll be able to work as a paralegal.
Well, that's right. And what did they base denying your pro hoc vice on?
Well, these judges, it's funny, there were these big trials in the 60s and 70s in which these lefties, like the Weather Underground, the Black Panthers, Eldridge Cleaver, these
Bobby
big
Seale.
names. Absolutely. They got to get the lawyer of their choice, didn't they? They high-flying defense lawyers like William Kunstler, who was the national director of the ACLU, president of the ACLU. William Kunstler,
the American
he would fly
Criminal
out.
Liberties Union.
Well, what's amazing is back then, the defendants were able to get the counsel of their choice. Now, all these judges are essentially overturning the case law that existed on the books years ago. The Ferretta v. California case, which was decided by the Supreme Court, I believe, in the 1970s. Ferretta v. California. It stands for the proposition that everyone has a right to represent himself. And it's part of the Sixth Amendment right to counsel. Not only do you have the right to counsel, but you have the right to refuse counsel. Absolutely fundamental right under the Sixth Amendment. Well, these modern judges have basically overturned it, although they don't say so. what they do is they impose so-called standby counsel constantly. So when someone fires their lawyer and says, I want to represent myself, the judge immediately says, oh, well, great, I'll give you standby counsel. And in these cases, both Nevada and Oregon, and by the way, this is what's being done in these kinds of trials today everywhere. It's happening everywhere. They're basically working around Feretta v. California. You saw Clive and Bundy wanted.
But there's as many cases where the case has been reversed. The verdict has been reversed because of denying them the counsel of their choice.
Well, the case law is still pretty strong in the Ninth Circuit. So my understanding is, or my overview of the cases is, I agree that these trial judges are on very thin ground when they do this. However, they want control much more than the judges of the past. And, they probably lean toward the prosecution much more than the judges of the past. And so, in those big Black Panther trials and things where they got to have William Kunstler and other big-name lawyers, Jerry Spence, that's all over. Basically, these modern judges are just trying to get control and having their friendly country club lawyers that they know personally.
Right, to run the buzzsaw.
Running the case.
Right.
And so, you saw Clive and Bundy in Las Vegas wanted to have his counsel of his choice, and the judge just denied that. He's out of state. He's not a member of the bar of the U.S. District of Nevada. And so, and just making almost any excuse to keep these defendants from getting
Larry Klayman,
the attorneys of their choice.
It's absolutely disgusting what a star chamber this is.
Yeah. It's virtually every major protection of criminal procedure has been shaved away. And we're seeing that more and more. It's just been shaved away. You look at, just the amount of plea negotiations. I mean, trials almost are non-existent anymore. It's very rare to see any trials.
Oh, no, and a judge will punish you for going to trial. Hey, you took my time, I'm going to give you some.
The sentences are so outrageously high that almost no one can afford. I mean, it's just you're basically putting you're putting your life in the hands of a jury. It's that because the sentences are so outrageous.
Well, Roger, my thing with the jury is, well, number one, where are they going to get a jury from that's going to be the cross section that that's going to represent Harney County where this happened? Where are they going to get those people from? They're not. They're going to load it with city people. They are. And is that a reversible error?
It's already the motions have been denied. Of moving the trial to Pendleton. They've been denied getting a jury that was actually, it's funny. It's a combination of things. There is a fundamental right under statute and under the Fifth Amendment grand jury clause to look at the records of grand jury selection. And by the way, trial jury selection also. And it's absolutely in the statute, and it's been upheld by the Supreme Court. I mean, it's that clear. The trial judge has to give you the right to inspect the records.
Right, that's called inspecting the grand jury. Isn't that what you call inspecting the grand jury?
Well, inspecting the records. Where did they come from? Which counties? Which is when you're trying to make an argument that there's a geographic bias or discrimination going on, you need to know where the jury pool is being selected from. Anyway, so, defendants made these motions, and it's something I've never even seen before. The trial judge says, well, we won't show you the records. We'll have the clerk of the jury. The jury clerk will issue a declaration of what towns the jurors came from. Anyway, it was a clear violation. Shauna Cox is appealing interlocutorily right now on that issue. And I believe the other defendants are joining in that, but they're not stopping the trial.
I'm telling you, the Ninth Circuit are just as, there's a couple non-Marxists on it, but they're pretty much loaded as Marxists there too.
Well, the federal judiciary is, at one time, probably 50 years ago, it was common for people to say that federal judges and federal courts were more protective of individual procedural protections. especially in places like the South, where honestly the state courts in Mississippi and Louisiana were terrible, and still are to some extent. But at one time, people in such places could look to the federal courts as being a little bit more protective. That is history. That is no longer the case.
Yeah.
Today, the federal courts are the most tyrannical.
Yeah, when
in
Alex
almost any state.
I don't know if you saw Alex Kaczynski's foreword to License to Lie. I mean, he's on the Ninth Circuit, and he was chief judge at the time that he wrote it, because he didn't write it as official capacity. But I mean, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable how badly this is stacked against, people.
Well, the legal profession itself is stacked in favor of the government, just overwhelmingly. They've recently done some research that shows that 85% of all law professors, these are in the law schools that produce the lawyers, 85% are, pro-government.
Oh, I'm telling you, I was reading
they're registered Democrats, which means, I use the word Democrat as a proxy for a truster of expansive government. So you can say 85% of them are in, along the lines of trusting expansive, intrusive government. And again, I don't want to me, Democrat and Republican mean almost nothing.
No.
But having gone to law school, I can tell you it is so rare that you'll find any libertarian law professor. It's almost like they don't exist. And there's just a handful of them, and they're a couple famous ones. Richard Epstein at the University of Chicago, I think now he's at NYU. Trying to think of the main guy at Georgetown. What is his name? Anyway, the point is there are a few libertarian law professors, but that's very, very few. 85% are registered Democrats. And they're churning out lawyers that are of the same mentality. The bigger government, the better.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because when this whole thing goes, the Bolshevik way, they'll go to jail because the Marxists have no regard for anyone, and they'll be part of it. They'll be part of the end up on this. But you know what I thought was really just one of the more disgusting things about this case, Roger, was the fact that they had to keep everyone for 5 hours that night on the road while they ran around and got a judge out of bed to sign an arrest warrant.
Oh, that happens from time to time.
Yeah, well, that was definitely on the hallmark of this case here. They, went and did what they wanted to do and then got a judge to sign it after the fact. I thought that was just par for the course.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Hey, listen, we're coming up on a break soon. I want to encourage everyone to read your book, The Conviction Factory. it's disturbing, but it at least show people what it's supposed to be like, what it used to be like, and so they can kind of set their sight on what this country needs to return to. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah, you got to read it. It's a fabulous book, and I couldn't put it down. I mean, it's a very scholarly book, but yet at the same time, it was a page turner. I mean, just a beautiful work, Roger. I'm so glad you wrote that.
Well, yeah, it's a labor of love.
Yeah, right. Well, listen, I hope please give Shauna and the Bundys and everyone up there our best. And I'm so happy that you're working on it. I wish you could get on Pro Hoc VJ and help with jury selection and all that. But just being there at the table, I'm sure you're going to be a great help to them.
Well, it'll definitely be very interesting. I mean, it's obviously I'm rooting for acquittals across the board, and they're up against everything, though. I mean,
they are.
The amount of resources they're up against is unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Let's hope a jury can see through it. All right, Roger Ritz, Thank you so much. I appreciate your time tonight.
All right. Well, thank you.